Hey everyone. So I was scrolling through the news the other day and I saw this headline: US national debt hits $30 trillion. And I thought, wait, what? How does a country even owe that much money? Who do they owe it to? And can't they just, I don't know, print more? Turns out it's not that simple. So today we're diving into the wild world of sovereign debt, aka government debt. By the end of this video, you'll know why countries borrow money, what happens when they can't pay it back, and how all of this affects you. Let's get into it. Okay, first things first. What even is sovereign debt? Well, it's basically money that governments borrow to pay for stuff. And by stuff, I mean things like roads, schools, hospitals, and even wars. Think of it like this. If you wanted to build a giant Lego city, but you didn't have enough cash to buy all the bricks, you might borrow money from a friend. Governments do the same thing, but instead of asking their friends, they issue bonds, which are basically fancy IOUs that say, hey, lend us some cash, and we'll pay you back with interest later. But here's something you might not know. Who actually lends money to governments? It's not just rich billionaires or banks. It's regular investors, pension funds, and even other countries. Yep, China and Japan hold over $1 trillion each in US government debt. In a way, when you buy a government bond, you're lending money to your own country. Now, here's where it gets wild. Some countries borrow a lot. Like the US owes over $30 trillion and Japan's debt is more than 260% of its GDP. That's like if you owed 2.6 times your yearly salary in student loans. Yikes! Now, before you start thinking all debt is evil, let's flip the script. Borrowing isn't always bad. In fact, it lets governments fund big projects without raising taxes or cutting spending. So, in a way, debt can be a tool, but like any tool, it can backfire if you're not careful. Here's where it gets interesting. Not all debt is created equal. Alright, so what happens if a country can't pay back its debt? Well, it's called a sovereign default, and it's basically the financial equivalent of a hurricane. Take Greece, for example. Back in 2010, Greece defaulted on its debt, and it was chaos. The government had to slash spending, cut pensions, and raise taxes. People were furious and the economy tanked. Or look at Argentina in 2001. They defaulted on $100 billion in debt, and unemployment shot up to over 20%. It was a full-blown economic depression. Defaults don't just hurt the government, they hurt everyday people. Jobs disappear, prices skyrocket, and life gets a whole lot harder. So yeah, not paying your debts, not a great idea. Here's something you might not know. Over 100 countries have defaulted on their debt at some point. Some, like Argentina, have defaulted multiple times. It's a cycle that's hard to break once it starts. Here's a question I get a lot. Why don't countries just print more money to pay off their debt? I mean, it sounds like a cheat code, right? Well, printing too much money leads to hyperinflation, which is when your currency becomes as valuable as monopoly money. Take Weimar Germany in the 1920s. They printed so much money to pay off World War I debts that a loaf of bread cost billions of marks. People literally needed wheelbarrows of cash to buy groceries, so while printing money might seem like an easy fix, it's basically financial suicide. Lesson learned: don't try to cheat the system. Some countries print money to manage their debt, but they do it carefully. For example, the US Federal Reserve uses quantitative easing, a fancy term for printing money to buy government bonds. But this is done in moderation and with strict controls to avoid hyperinflation. Okay, so here's the big question. How does all this debt affect you? Well, buckle up, because it's closer to your life than you might think. For starters, high debt can lead to higher taxes. Governments need to pay off that debt somehow, and guess who's footing the bill? Yep, you and me. It can also mean cuts to public services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. So, that pothole on your street? It might not get fixed anytime soon. And don't forget about interest rates. High debt can push rates up, making mortgages, car loans, and credit cards more expensive. In extreme cases like Greece, debt crises can lead to job losses and economic instability. So yeah, government debt isn't just some abstract concept. It hits home for all of us. Here's something else to think about. Too much debt can slow down economic growth. When governments spend a huge chunk of their budget just paying interest on debt, there's less money left for things that actually help the economy grow, like innovation and job creation. So, what's the big picture? Sovereign debt is like a double-edged sword. It can build roads, schools, and hospitals, but If it's mismanaged, it can spiral into crises that hit everyday people hard. It's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet, it's about jobs, taxes, and the economy we all live in. Debt isn't inherently bad, but it's all about balance. Too much, and you're in trouble. Too little, and you might miss out on growth. Should governments keep piling on debt to fuel growth, or is it time to tighten the belt and play it safe? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and remember, when it comes to money, whether it's yours or a country's, the stakes are always high. See you next time.